Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we will be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLibPodcast. I'm your co-host Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at KRXXTXN on all social media platforms. So, I actually read this book this time, and I read it in 2 days.
This is the Kristen redemption arc where
This was published in 1995? Did you just make that up?
No.
Sorry, I just looked at that. I don't believe you. I actually don't believe that.
It was originally published in 1995, and then it got a translation in 1997, I believe. That's, yeah.
Well, on Goodreads, it says for this edition it was 1998. Dang, I didn't realize it was so old. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. Because I was like, where's the technology at for real?
Yes, I think it was intentionally written like that because,
Yeah. Well, not talking
I don't
about
know
it too
how
much
far
yet.
we want to get too far into it.
But this is the book, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. For those of you that don't know, I guess what the book is about. So, because I know it's kind of gaining popularity on BOOK-TOK, which I think that's also why it was so shocking to me, because old books, quote unquote, get popular on BOOK-TOK, but I don't think I've seen anything from before the year 2000, except for maybe The Secret History is you know what I'm saying? Everything is usually within the last 15 years, I would say, is what gets big on BOOK-TOK.
I have a very different BOOK-TOK For You page.
Well, yes, everyone has their own but I feel what blows up.
I think there's a rise in literary BOOK-TOK is I think what it's considered, where it's just the literary fiction, but it's a little bit more.
But lit-fic is still
refined?
Modern though. All this stuff, Bunny is a big one. You know what I'm saying? Those type of books are still modern.
I think there's a user called the Post Office Girl, and she posts a lot of videos, and there's more coming up like her, who are sharing I read pretentious books or whatever, so they'll show their books recommendations.
And they're reading Dostoevsky.
Funny enough, there's been a lot of people reading the Brothers Karamazov or whatever. It's just random people reading, and they're like, "Wait, this is actually a banger." People are reading the Count of Monte Cristo. People are going back because I think people are kind of starting to get burnt on BOOK-TOK books, and they're kind of searching back and trying to figure out what literature was like before this, because I know in the last 5 years or so with BOOK-TOK, they are just getting back into reading. So now, because they're reading so much, I think people are realizing that there's trends arising in the type of literature, so that may be why stuff like this is starting to gain a lot more popularity.
I mean, this one's kind of been popular for a hot minute too, though. I feel I've been, because it was, whenever I looked, it was on my want to read for 2 years already. In 2023 is whenever I added it to my Goodreads want to read. So this is something that's been in the circle.
I started seeing it too.
So it's been in the popularity sphere, at least for the last couple of years, I would say. But we finally just now got around to reading it.
This was a book club option. Not last month. There's not month before.
May. I think for Mother's Day, women-centered is what we were doing. So we picked all women-centered books. And then instead we ended up reading
Severance, I think. Was it Severance?
Was it? It must have been Severance. Was it? I don't know. I'm about to check the poll.
I don't remember. It was one of the ones.
It was recent though. I didn't think it was that long ago.
Yeah. So this didn't make the cut for a book club pick, and honestly,
it was close though. I think it was nominated, but I think it's because we picked, because it tied with something else, but we picked the other one because the way that this is not split up by chapters, it's just one thing. You know what I'm saying? And so we were like, well, we'll just do the other one because we want it to be able so that we could individually discuss each chapter versus we could not do that with. Okay, it was in March we did it. It was nominated and we picked Eileen instead.
Well, that was a fuck up. Anyways.
But this also I also am glad we didn't do this for the book club because I feel like I would have also enjoyed it less if we did it with the book club because I feel like it's kind of a hard book club book unless you have read it all. You can't do like updates like how we do our book club.
Yes, like maybe a real life book club where you're meeting
once a month.
And you're talking about your book. This would be good, but there's no real breaks.
No, it's all very stream of conscious. Like you're all like,
yeah.
I think it is. And that's one thing that I was very surprised. Well, okay, so people that don't know what it's about, because I guess there's probably some people that have never heard of this or whatever. But basically, it's about these 40 women that are locked in a bunker and they don't know why they're there. And they're guarded by these guards that switch out at random times. And they live in a bunker and they're fed on a schedule, basically. And they're put to sleep at a certain time. They're not allowed to touch and they're not allowed to interact with each other. And basically, this young girl was locked up in this cage at the age before she even had memories. So, like, toddler age. And she's growing up with these women and she's never known a man in her life, basically. And that's kind of all you get. I feel like that's like the first half of the book.
I think that's all you need to really know going into it before you get into it. You should know, which apparently Kristen didn't know this, is that it was written in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because Jacqueline Hartman was born in 1929, so the fact that she was wrote this when she was in her 70s,
yeah,
I think is really interesting.
It is kind of like I feel like maybe if you like, I haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, so I can't necessarily compare them, but I do feel like this is sort of like that vibe of like The Handmaid's Tale, like the dystopian era sort of thing.
Maybe. I mean, I haven't read the book. I did watch the first 3 seasons of The Handmaid's Tale. I don't know how it compares. I was like, to the show, I wouldn't agree. It was like, it is dystopian.
I think, well, it's like dystopian that's women-centered.
Yeah, so they have that in common.
But I feel like the vibe of the way that it like discusses like feminism in a way, I feel like it's probably the way that the liberals talk about The Handmaid's Tale is like reminds me of this, if that makes sense.
Obviously I haven't read it. I have it on my shelf.
We should read it at some point because I have it too.
We'll do it at some point. I don't know when, just to really get a good reflection. But we're not going to do that until after we read Octavia Butler's Parable of Sour. Because I think that's going to be better. So maybe we can time it for like December or something. I don't know.
Maybe we got a lot of stuff to read at the end of the year.
What else do we want to talk about? There's not a lot about this because it is an older book. I did find out that Jacqueline Hartman's family, she had to end up escaping the occupation of Belgium by Nazi Germany, like when they were doing their expansion. So they ended up fleeing to Morocco, and on her paternal family side, they were like almost all of them were killed in Auschwitz.
Oh my god.
So she had a really interesting, not interesting,
sad,
tragic, very sad, tragic life growing up, and she wasn't allowed to go to a French high school because she was Jewish. So there's a lot going on. She did end up meeting a teacher and fell in love with French. So that
I thought you were gonna say fell in love with her teacher. I was like, no. That's a wrong book. Wrong book.
She had a lot going on in her life. She did a lot. She had many degrees. I saw somewhere where she was in architecture. She was also married to an architect. And then she also worked as
she's no longer with us.
She's not. She died in 2012.
Oh, so that's a pretty long life. 1929 to 2012. That's a long time.
Yeah, 80 some odd years. She got many awards. I think many awards. She got 4. which is pretty good. They're different.
Are they
they're
for
like
this
friendship
book?
awards. No, just
Oh.
in her life. I didn't see any for this specific book.
Do they speak French
For
in
this
Belgium?
specific book. I don't know. I didn't look that
Oh.
up, and I felt like that was quite ignorant of me to not know.
That's what I was wondering. Because
What?
whenever you're like, "Oh, you texted me, she's originally from Belgium." And I asked Tyler, I said, "What do they speak in Belgium?" He goes, "Belgianese." I'm like, I have no idea.
Dutch. I think she originally
Oh, that
spoke
makes
Dutch.
sense.
I remember seeing that. 'Cause they do
That makes
speak
sense.
Dutch, French, and German, but I think Dutch is what she originally had learned growing up, and then she
Learn
fully
French.
committed to learning French. This book was originally written in French, and then 1997 or 1998, it got a UK English translation, which I think is important to acknowledge because some
It
of
is
the
British.
words that are used is very like British feeling.
Takes you
Just
out of
like
the
trolleys.
dystopian.
I
Mummy! I had a
Mommy!
mummy at one time.
But yeah, that's what I was able to find. I didn't really see anything about her It's hard. Sometimes finding stuff about these older authors can be difficult. I didn't really see anything. I didn't see any controversy. Doesn't mean that there
She
isn't
hasn't been
any. I
canceled.
just didn't, no, she hasn't gotten canceled on
Not
TikTok
yet.
or Twitter yet. But this is a very beloved book. I don't know if any of her other books have gotten English translations. At this point, so
I don't know either. The rating on Goodreads, 4.15 stars, which is pretty good. Over 4 stars out of 284K ratings, which I kind of thought it wouldn't be. I was expecting more of like around 100K reviews, I guess, for this, because I feel like that's like TikTok popularity gets you to like 100K reviews, like ratings, reviews, whatever. But then once you're past that, it's kind of almost more mainstream too, then. Which I'm assuming because it's also an older book, it's gotten more opportunity to come around.
yeah, I think with TikTok specifically promoting this book, it got a lot more traction. That's
Mhm.
just like the way it goes with BOOK-TOK. That's
It's
how
so
book
random
um,
sometimes.
it is very random, but that's how like the publishing industry is now working on their marketing
Structured.
and whatnot. So it makes sense that we're having these accounts that like reading classics, older books that don't exist or like are not like new shit that are coming out. They're just like focusing on reading older stuff or like New York review books, stuff within that
Yeah.
genre. They're starting to get traction and popularity, so now it's pulling these, or I guess dredging these books up that may have gotten forgotten, or never really got the right attention that they could have gotten until now, which I think is really cool. This is why I like being on
Book
like the New
talk.
York
Yeah.
review book that older because there's so many really interesting authors, people that maybe
And you
only wrote
found that
one
through
book.
Book Talk, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I found it from Post Office Girl, who's a
Yeah.
Korean book talker.
Well,
So
because
she's
I
also
know
how I found Steven Zweig's The Royal Game and Post Office Girl, which I have right here. I love the cover of these. I think they're so fun, and this is like my Penguins classic. I like these. Um, it's interesting. It's very different reading
yeah,
books that are not written
classics.
today because you can tell how books are written today, and I thought this was a breath of fresh air. And I know we're gonna spend some time talking about it. I gave this book a 5 star. Like, this is for me my perfect book. I can definitely see people not rating it that high, but for me, when I hear the term weird girl lit-fic, this is what I want. It's
I don't
not just somebody like making a caricature of like a
but I
weird
don't
girl.
think
This
it's
felt
like
like authentically weird.
but it didn't feel like Weird Girl to me either. It felt just like commentary on society. I mean, I ended up giving it 3 stars because surprisingly, I actually was not against the writing style, and I actually felt like this book was really bingeable to read. Like, I read it really fast, too, considering there's not a lot going on, and I know, like, for me personally, like, I usually don't like very character-driven stories. I like a little bit more of a plot, which this kind of has a plot, which I won't say too much, but I will say that this book the reason why I only gave it 3 stars is because I find the ending disappointing.
Yes, you're not the only one. We do
No.
have another like, one of my friends, Chris, um, left a comment on one of my recent, like, literary liberation posts, saying the same thing, that the ending frustrated them to no avail because there's no closure, um, which
Spoiler.
we're segueing. If you're not in your it's an open-ended book. This happens a lot with
It
some
is a very
older books.
philosophical book,
Yeah.
so you're, like, meant to think and reflect on what you've just read, and I understand that, but then it's also, like, sometimes I feel like I didn't want like, I understand like, I was reflecting throughout the book anyways, but I would still love to see, like, what the author's final thoughts are on, like, certain things too. You know what I'm saying? Like, where they're actually because I do think the author is very clear about her messaging and what she's putting across in lots of ways, but I just do feel like you could have still had, like, something a little bit more exciting at the end to make it feel good, you know? Like, feel like a solid and complete story.
I mean, I felt like it was complete in what it needed
I
to
mean, it
do, but
ended.
we can get into it, like, what
It
we think,
ended.
our theories. There's a lot of people that talk about theories on this book specifically, on which kind of avenue they're falling into, because some people are like, again, this is spoiler zone. There's no way with discussing this that we can go any further. I guess we could say whether or not you recommend reading
No.
this book or no. I didn't think you I did not think Kristen would like this. So,
I mean, I think I could recommend it to somebody specific, but I think it's like a principle. Like, if some random person came up to me and said, "Should I read this?" I would say no. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless I knew, like, what they were into sort of thing, that I could be like, "Oh, yeah, maybe for you." But, like, as a blanket recommendation, I would say no.
like, this is definitely a 5-star for me, and I do think I think it's a good book. I think it's a good book that people should try to read.
I mean, I think
I
the thing
also
is
like novellas, so
it's written very simply, which is nice, and it doesn't like even though it is older, it doesn't feel like obviously like it feels older because of like there's like lack of technology, but it's a dystopian society, so you kind of understand that, but it doesn't feel super old either. Like I feel like it could have been published in 2020 and I would still like, it's not written like anyway. Which I don't know if that's just a good job of the translators too, because I really don't feel like it felt like a translated novel ever versus reading like Tender as the Flesh. That feels like you're reading a translated novel.
yeah, I think the translator really popped off with this.
Because it felt very natural. Like whoever did it, which I don't know what it says. I didn't read the afterword. Ross Ross Schwartz. Hats off to you for translating this novel. I think you did a good job. But moving on officially, I guess, to spoiler zone.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to go about discussing this in the most, I guess, lucrative fashion.
It's kind of a
Um,
lot to discuss too. So I feel like we're probably gonna have to like focus on like the overarching. Because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this book is just walking around. Not gonna lie.
walking sim. I think it could like be interpreted as like they do a lot of walking, but I mean the initial part where they're in the prison in the cage, I found it really interesting, and I think it
Yeah,
was a
I
lot of
think
this
that.
is symbolism. I think that's what it kind of boils down to, is you
Mhm.
have to be really into symbolic meanings in books to be able to have the best experience. So if you're not into that and kind of thinking through that, you won't get a lot, because we have prison. Like, to be imprisoned is
Yes.
an overarching theme. And the women in the prison, right?
Mhm.
What they're living like could be interpretive of living in a capitalist society, a cis
Yeah.
heteropatriarchal society. Like, it could be a stand-in for that because of the way that they have to live. I mean, they're being fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the dot. Like, they have to eat this time. They're only have so many ingredients to
And you don't get
manipulate and
sharp
make. Yeah,
knives.
no sharp knives. Yeah, no suicide.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
You can't even
You
kill
can't do that.
yourself here. That's
You
my
can't
hell.
touch anybody, you can't, which I thought was really interesting.
No reading or writing, which I thought too, like, I thought they would at least have, like, some form of, like, entertainment in, like, a way, you know what I'm saying? Because they didn't even have books or anything, which is really weird because to me and I think this is why I think it was most interesting whenever it was in the bunker, more than I was interested whenever I was out of the bunker, because ultimately, especially at the end, once they were out of the bunker, like, spoiler alert, nothing happens. Like, they don't find anybody and they just die one by one, which is like, I get it. But it's also like, I thought it was a more interesting dynamic to look at them inside of the bunker and how they wouldn't even like how they talked about whenever like the one lady tried to commit suicide or whatever, and just the cracking of the whip made somebody else stop her from killing herself, where it wasn't even her stopping because she didn't care about getting whipped. It was somebody else scared of the ramifications of it. And I think it really does, to me anyways, I was able to see that idea of living under capitalism, and everybody is just at that point where they're at their breaking point, but then they're also doing nothing to stop it. And I feel like it is very similar to what it is to live, like, at least, like, under, like, a Trump presidency now too, you know? Where we're all at this point, but we're still too trained to not do anything about it.
Yes, even in, like, the way that they organize themselves is very symbolic of the life that they had been living before, creating these
Mhm,
weird arbitrary hierarchies that the child is very aware, like, this does not make any fucking sense because
mhm.
she doesn't have any perception of what real life was like. So all of these women know these things, and that's frustrating her throughout this. She's like, I don't understand why you're doing these things or why
Mhm.
you're talking about men because that's just something she's never seen, like this other type of
Experienced.
human being who you form intimate relationships with or seeing another child. She's never seen another child. So, like, there's all of these things that she doesn't understand, and the women are reluctant in sharing this with her. So she just creates like her own stories in her mind to keep herself entertained because she still is a child and she's only
Mhm.
like 13, I think. Um,
I think she's
she
15
doesn't,
whenever they get
anyway.
out,
Yeah, she's really
technically.
young. So and then, like, the little things that she does as, like, acts of rebellion, she's like, "I'm gonna stare at this guard. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stare at him until he does something,"
Like, what
because
the
that's the
hell's
only
that
thing,
gonna
like,
do?
they don't
It
but they
pissed
can't
me
control
off.
her eyes.
Well, yes,
They
but
can't
also
control her eyes or anything.
but that's the thing is that I feel like, because, like, the thing is that I don't know, I feel like if me and you were in this situation, if we were in that bunker, we'd be still be getting whipped, like, every day. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
but it
Because,
makes
like,
you wonder because you were in there for so long, it seems like they did until they're hit a point of there is no turning
submissiveness.
this around. There's no way of getting around any of these because, like, they're just confined, so they kind of just conformed, and I think conformity is another relevant theme within this, and you don't really get to
But it's
see the
'cause they're not
dynamic.
principled Marxists. But because I think the
This
idea
is
is
true.
too, is that they were talking about too, like, she was saying, like, a lot of the women were simple-minded, quote, from the book and stuff like that, because a lot of the women, so because my understanding is that maybe that a lot of these women's were maybe like, imprisoned before, like, major technology was around and stuff, because, like, they were talking about the different careers and stuff, like, one, majority of the women were stay-at-home moms and, stay-home parents and stuff like that, which, one, we don't like, obviously, that still happens in the United States, but not at the same rate as it used to be, like, post-World War II, I guess, after the baby boom and stuff like that, so that's how I was kind of inferring that, because if there were so many stay-at-home moms and so many women not out in the force, like, the workforce, it was really interesting to me, because then you only had, like, the few people that were in the workforce, and they still didn't even have, like, their own memories or understanding either because of how they were treated.
Yeah, I think that was fascinating to
I
me
thought that
because
was an
there's a
interesting
couple lines.
representation
Yeah,
of,
about,
like,
like, how
modern day.
limited they were in understanding how they could navigate this society, which you don't get until later on, where what I can't remember what exactly she said. Um, where they were talking about, like, clothing and stuff, and they couldn't remember how to make anything because everything was created for them. So, like, it
Yes. Oh,
wasn't quite
towards
like
the end.
1950s or 1960s, but they did like, all they had were or she says
Pre-made.
what was it? It was Greta. She said, "We're not very resourceful, are we? We come from a world where it wasn't necessary. Everything was ready-made, and we never asked how things were produced." So, it that you don't get to later on. It moves the
Mhm.
plot and the timeline in your head, like, okay, this isn't necessarily the 1950s, 1960s sort of like fallout not like steampunk type
Mhm.
situation happening. But it's definitely later, so it's gotta be like 70s or 80s when we're having
I
the
think
emergence of
70s
fast
at the
fashion.
latest, honestly,
Yeah,
is what I
which
would
would make
think.
sense.
Yeah, with
And
how
I thought that was really interesting how they're still able to do the thing. Like, they know basic things in cooking
yeah.
and but all of their knowledge is stunted because of the society that they originally were from. They never got to learn everything, and then
Yeah.
they got to a point where they didn't wanna teach the child anything because 'cause they're like, "Oh, well, we tried to when you were young, but there was just, like, no way of doing it," and she's just so insistent on this pursuit of knowledge, which I thought was really refreshing because she's gets upset and says, like, "I just wanna know," know because sometimes you can use what you know, but that's not what counts most. I want to know everything there is to know, not because it's any use, but purely for the pleasure of knowing. And now I demand that you teach me everything you know, even if I'll never be able to use it. And don't forget, I'm the youngest, and one day I'll probably be the last, and I might need to know things for reasons I can't imagine today, which I think is such a fantastic point for the child to be able to extract because even
Mhm.
I don't know, like, the older generation, they don't want to learn. They don't wanna do any of these things, so they're just like, "Well, why? Like, this just the way that things are.
Mhm.
Why do I need to learn?" And she's like, "No, like, I'm literally going to be alone." And it
Yeah.
does. In the end, everything she's able to extract from all these women, and she ends up having a deeper appreciation for this community of women who she originally didn't
Hated.
like.
Mhm.
She was frustrated and angry that, like, they didn't treat her as an equal. Um it all benefited her in the end because she was able to have a robust life in a different bunker that she's able to uncover, which we haven't even really touched on their exploration, which
No.
I think kind of, like, plays into this as well because they get to a point where they just kind of stop exploring. They escape the bunker by a fluke, an absolute freak second of a guard having a key inside of the door, and you
'Cause
don't
they were
realize
delivering their
how
food.
yeah, delivering their
Yeah.
food, these alarms go off, and they realize, "Okay, we can get out," and then they spend their next, I think, like, 5 years or something, like, they're just walking, exploring all of these
Mhm.
different bunkers, and
And
nobody else has gotten this treatment.
nobody else got out.
Nobody got out, and they're seeing which I think there's, like, another element of, like, the human condition and seeing what the cells look like, and they do find men who are
Yeah.
dead,
And also
and,
locked
like,
up
they're
in these prisons.
and you're left wondering who the guards were, why they were doing this, but also the child is really fixated on how these people spent their last moments alive, which was very morbid, but she also has never
Mhm.
seen somebody dead.
Yeah.
She's only ever known one state of being. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting.
Well, because it's interesting too because she became the one that, like, put them people out of their misery. She take them out back and shoot them. You know what I'm
She's a
saying?
real one for that.
Instead of, like, whenever, cause I mean, I can imagine it's hard situation to be in, like, where you have to, like, put put a person down sort of thing, but there's no way to, like, ease people out of that situation, and I just felt like it was incredibly frustrating. This is, like, where I, like, find the frustration too, is the fact that, like, there's nobody alive, but, like, there has to be something out there because, like, these cabins are still powered, you know? Like, generators run out, like, water stops running, but every time she goes in this cabin, their freezer is still full and their food is still frozen, you know? And so I think that's what's so incredibly frustrating is that you get to the end and it's like, okay, it's all for nothing. She learned and appreciated all this to never even spread that knowledge further on to anyone else.
I think that's, like, where the ending like, you are reading the paper that she wrote.
Well, yes, but she's not
So, like,
real.
the insinuation is that, like, you're reading some ancient text that you have, like, discovered,
But she's
and
not real. So
I
you could have put a
well,
fictional
it's a fictional
person.
novel.
You could have put a fictional person picking up the novel or something if you cared that much. But I like generally I just think it's really frustrating because I'm like I just read all this and then I get no satisfaction at the end. They're just like, "Well, okay, it's done. Thanks for that. Bye. Like, peace out. Thanks for reading. Check
I
out my
don't know,
next
it didn't
novel."
bother me. I don't know how many novels she's actually written, but this one specifically, like her even finding, like her finding a bus
full of
with the guards on
skeletons,
it,
yeah. Yeah, that's
which
what I'm saying, and it's all for nothing, it doesn't matter.
I mean, to you. You think
Oh,
it sometimes, the story is not necessarily about the destination, it's about the journey,
and the journey was
and
boring.
I
I
know, but
walked
this is
around and
just to
looked at
you.
the stars, but nobody recognized the constellations.
I mean, you have to think that because
So they're
that's the
on a
thing, they
different
don't
planet.
know if they're on Earth or not, or if it's just lost knowledge, or if they're in a different part of Earth that they've never recognized. It's like, why like, that is like, you're
But there's
sitting
no
there
way that
perplexed.
everyone's dead, like, there's nothing there. Like, just, you know? Mary Jane got the right idea.
Oh, but she was also sick, wasn't she? Or was that, like, the
She was just
original?
depressed.
Oh, she the one that just went, I can't remember. There was
Yeah,
quite a few.
she tried to kill herself earlier on, and then they stopped her, and then she killed herself later on. My queen.
No, and I think she doesn't, like, falls into the category of women that think they've traded one prison for another. Because initially a lot of them thought that, which I don't think they did. I think they
No,
were
I feel
finally
like
able to just embrace their full self. And I did see I think it was in the review. Kristen sent me a review of somebody.
I felt like it was a pretty well written review. I understood it.
We'll have it linked, but it's written by somebody named Iba. That's how I'm choosing to pronounce it. I didn't agree with what they were saying, that the book seems to imply that it's only because they don't have any men, they don't have any other choice but to strive for basic human need to connect. They give each other what they can as if it's a lesser form of love, but that's being done from that person's perspective because you have first person limited. And
'Cause it is from, the
yeah, so,
child's point
like,
of
you
view.
have it from the child's point of view, and you're hearing it from somebody she's talking to, so obviously that person still has all of those things to unpack because they grew up in a patriarchal society, and patriarchal society says, "Hey, heterosexual relationships are the priority," which in this bunker, that's all they've had to really analyze and learn, and being queer at this point in time, like, even in the 90s wasn't a super huge thing, like, being out really wasn't as acceptable until, like, the what,
Well, yes,
2010s?
but I also don't think that this book is, like, the way that it's framed and stuff, they're never framed as, like, being, like, this glorious lesbian commune either, you know? It's just, like, women living together, you know?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
the
like,
vibe.
they have, like, communal, like, living, they have different houses that they get situated with, there's talks of, like, polyamorous relationships that have developed, and it's like, they are able to go beyond what they know, like the binary, and they're able to find and develop really deep relationships with one another that I thought was
Well,
quite
that we're
nice.
assuming because
I
we're
mean,
not
what
really
you get
given.
from the context clue
Well,
obviously,
because
like,
that's
we're
what
not
this
in there,
person
but
is saying whenever they give what they can. Because means because, like, I think what this person is saying too whenever they say they give each other what they can, it imply like, saying it like that implies that it won't be full of what, like, a man could give you or what a true societal relationship could give you or whatever. It's implied in
yeah, but
that
that's
way.
just from that one person's perspective. That
That's a
says
line from
that.
the book, though, that says they give each other what they can.
No, yeah, but it wasn't her own internal monologue, she's having a conversation with the nurse lady when
Yeah.
that's said. So
Yes,
it's
but
that
then
nurse lady says that, and obviously she has there's no resolved bigotry 'cause this is immediately after they leave the bunker,
mhm,
'cause it talks about the women under the blankets.
mhm,
So
yes.
it's not
But that doesn't
like, it's not an overall analysis if it's coming from one person because that isn't the consensus among the
I
40
mean, that
women.
doesn't mean that it's not the consensus of the main character either, though, because it's not like she ever unpacks that or even views that too, because even at the end too, where she's like, I have never known men, but I'm still dying because of my womb. You know?
Yeah, but it's like, it's not her saying, like, when she's saying she's hold on, give me a second. Let me yawn for a second. It's, like, really bad irony to have this thing, right? She's never throughout the thing, she doesn't understand. Like, she doesn't get menstruation.
Yes, I understand
That's
that.
something that's never affected her. She's never, like, had any gratification for masturbation, and she's also in, like,
That's
a
not true,
position where none
though.
of the women.
That's not true. She has gratification from it because she talks early on about one of her, like, dreams or, like, stories that she would tell about the man and stuff like that, that she had that blossom or whatever she said, which I think is implied as an orgasm.
That's not masturbation, though, having a fantasy.
No, but she orgasms from it.
Yeah, I never said that she didn't. I said that she
But
didn't
I
have
think
any
that's
sexual, it was like, you can still, like, have these
and she does
feelings.
touch herself.
Yeah, and she doesn't have any gratification from it. She talks about how she goes to the river.
That's one time, though.
Yeah, that's the only time she's like, "Well, it just wasn't for me because it didn't do anything,"
That's
like,
because she didn't break it into it.
she, like, is basically described as being, like, an asexual individual, like, she's not
I don't think she's
motivated.
asexual at all.
She has, like, a fantasy of something that's, like, hypothetical that she's never seen or could
But
be
that's also
tangible.
true because, like, the thing is that the only thing that we know is that she's not a lesbian, right? Like, she's not queer. Because obviously she never felt that way for that, but she's also never met anybody her own age or any you know what I'm saying? So it's not like she really had that choice placed upon her to be something else. The only people she was around was old, wrinkly women, and I'm not attracted to old, wrinkly women either, you know?
Yeah,
Personally.
and I know, like, they weren't that, like, they wouldn't be attracted to her, and she's not attracted to them. She's never had an opportunity to feel it, so
Yes.
she's, like, without sexuality.
Yes.
Yeah. What?
But that's what I'm saying is that because, like, acting as if, like, it's being devoid of, like, sexuality and things like that whenever I do think there is still, like it's, like, the beginning of, like, the discussions on how you need to, like, center men to decenter men, because you have to understand that you're centering men and, like, other aspects of your life before you can center them, and it's really interesting to me that, like, this character that has never, like, even, like, had any type of, like, understanding, their life is still centered on like, they're still centered on men in a way.
Yeah. Like,
Yes.
it's because they're not, like, it's not anything that she could ever experience, so it's, like, a fascination.
Yes, but that's the thing is that I think it kind of starts to like the reason why it's more disappointing too because it could have been something so much more, but then it wasn't.
Like, what, though?
I don't know, something better. Maybe she could have found a bunch of soldiers and killed them all.
I don't know what that would do for her character, it wouldn't be within her character, like,
Why not?
arc. Because even if with she, like, finds the gun, she's, like, has no utility outside of, like, "Well, maybe I could've," like, she has the hindsight, like, "I could've killed myself," but she never has any sort of ideas of, like, "I need to protect myself
It's
because
not
of the
about
society that she's with."
protection.
No, but she didn't, so why would she enact violence on another human being?
I said the guards because like that's the thing is
Yeah,
that
but
they
she
like
has
literally never
empathy
show up
towards
again.
them.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
she
can
starts to wonder, she's like, "I," so it wouldn't make sense for her to do something like that, just to enact random acts of violence
well, maybe
when
then
she's
her
only
character
doing
would
it
have
from
been
an
better.
empathetic perspective. I'm saying it wouldn't make sense. This was like, this is the only ending that really makes sense for
Is
her character.
nothing.
Like, I mean, it's interesting, and I think it keeps the plot going, but I think it would've just, like, I think I would've liked it less if there had been more.
I think there should have been something else because it's just like you spend all this time reading it, especially with how long it is. It's like almost 200 pages. You're sitting here reading this all for like nothing. You know, like you get no satisfaction at the end. You just get, well, everyone dies. Like we already know this.
Well, neither does she. She doesn't know.
What do you mean? Everybody knows we all die.
No, no, the main character. The main character never finds out anything, right? We
Yeah.
are in the same exact position as her, and that's what makes it so unique of a story, is that
Unique.
you are also yeah, because if it had been, like, had the closure, right, that you want, it wouldn't,
It'd be better.
like but it's not the experience that she has, so, like, you're forced to have
It's
that
not
same experience that she
real.
has. I well, none
So
of the
then
books on our
you
podcast that we read are real.
yeah, that's what I'm
Like, this is a
saying.
fiction
So that's why
podcast.
there's better ones whenever this is like in Severance when nothing happens. Like at the ending of Severance. Spoilers for Severance if you haven't read that book. But like the way that that book ends is just like how this book ends. It's just like, okay, see you later.
But this is at least executed well, and I thought we got a lot more of, like,
I think
into
it's the
like,
same.
exploration
I think it's
to
about the
you, but also,
same.
like, you don't like lit-fic, like, I think we've, like, pretty well established that, like, this is
I
not
mean,
the genre of books
I
that you
love
gravitate towards, and you
notes
don't
on an
like
execution.
old books.
That's not even true. I would love an old book if they were entertaining.
Can you name one that was written before the year 2000 that you like?
I
Like,
don't even
genuinely, like, I'm just curious if
let's
you do you have
see.
one off the top of your head?
I don't know when books are published either though, because like, you told me this was published before 2000, I was like, "Oh, dang, really?" Because I have read some older books. I got the graph right here on Storygraph, see?
Yeah, but, like, are those Marxist texts?
I don't know what they are, I can't see!
You have to go on Goodreads.
They don't give you
I'm just curious.
publication.
Yes, they do. On Goodreads?
From what though? From my 5 stars? No.
Oh, you wanna organize it by five-star reads and then by
Yeah,
the
and
year of
it's yeah.
publication?
Or, like, maybe not even 5-star, but if it's, like, 4-star or better, you know?
I don't know if you'll be able to find it, but
I don't know either.
I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was really an interesting book. I thought it was very speculative. I was left doing a lot of pondering and thinking, and I just don't tend to have this sort of reaction with a lot of newer books that are out, and I thought
I just
it
wish
was
that
nice.
I think there could have been something else. Something a little bit more, you know.
I just think if there had been too much closure,
Okay,
then
I found a
maybe
book that I
people
like
would
that was
stop. Oh?
published in 1990, but I can't say what it is, so I don't support that author anymore. So,
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
yeah, see, so
Is that so that's the only one?
that's in 4.5 stars. I had to go through
Okay.
each one of my star ratings individually
Oh,
and look
I
and
was just
see. This book published 1963. The Bell Jar, I give it 4.25 stars. The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison, 1970, 4.25 stars.
okay, okay. I was just curious because I
So,
know a
I
lot
do
of your
like
books
some
that
old
end up
books.
topping your charts every year are typically newer.
Well, I think that's just because I read newer books more than I read older books, typically. Mhm.
Trying to
Let's
think, do you
see.
have anything else you want to
RUR,
discuss?
4 stars, 1920.
There you go. I'm
See,
proud of you.
I like a couple. Speak, Lori Halls Anderson, published in 1999. Love that book. She's one of my favorite authors, Lori Halls Anderson. I read Frankenstein. I like Frankenstein. But see, those are all popular. Like, I like some old stuff. Just sometimes some old stuff, they be honk shua. You know? But other than that, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about? No?
No, I don't think so. Off the top of my head, those were, like, the main points
It was
that I
fine.
felt.
That's why I gave it 3 stars. It was mid. It was like, I wanted more, but it was also, like, fine. But,
I
like, I told
think if
Tyler,
you oh,
like, I
what?
gave him,
What'd you
like,
tell
the Rambot. I, told him the whole thing that happened. He was like, wow, that's kind of disappointing. I'm like, yeah, it is.
I think it just depends on what kind of an ending you want from a book.
I
I
want
don't I guess
something
not the ending,
action
I just want
packed.
something that's, like, leaving me with something to think about, I guess, because like, I sometimes books will have, like, endings that maybe I disagree with, but, like, if the overarching plot and the, like, commentary that's provided within it is Makes it seem like if it had a fully flushed out ending, it would take away from the commentary, because then you'd be like, wow, this had a really great plot line, whereas like this, we're
I
having
think
more
books can have
discussion at the end.
both. I think that's how they're really good, is if they have both. That they're strong social commentaries while also being entertaining and thought provoking. I wanted to have everything, you know? Can't
No.
just I want it to be well rounded. Like, I think like of things that I like. I mean, typically I do like more action packed things and stuff like that. But I do think like typically like I think this is like one of the first times that I think I was like actually like frustrated with an ending of a book too. Because I was like, there's no way I read all of this and nothing happens. There's no way I read all of this and nothing happens. That's why I kept reading. And then you read all of it and nothing happens. You're like, I just read all of this and nothing happened.
But compared to something like Eileen, where
That's the
Tuss and
same thing though.
Moshpeg. No,
But
but
she
like
doesn't
Tuss
have
and
the social
Moshpeg.
commentary either.
Yeah, it's completely divorced of social commentary, where like this, at least
Yes.
it's written lyrically. The
I graded this
character
higher
and
than
her
Eileen.
determination. I don't know what exactly. Did you give it exactly like a 3-star rating?
Yeah, I gave it 3 stars, just straight up.
I only saw the Goodreads rating, so I wasn't sure if you actually rated it a 3-star or if you were reading it lower and
No,
you
because
rounded it up.
I gave Severance a 3-star, and I think it's about on par with Severance.
Okay.
That's like the most recent book that I think that I've given 3 stars, I think.
I thought you were gonna rate it about the same as The Dispossessed, truthfully.
No, honestly, I hated The Dispossessed. That's like one of the worst books I've ever read. It's so goddamn boring.
Would you
At least
read
this was
another one
short.
of her books?
I'd read another one of her books, but it'd have to be something that's guaranteed to be action-packed, I think.
Action-packed.
Yeah, action-packed. I like people gunslinging, gun shooting. If someone ain't dying a murderous death, I don't want it.
So keep that in mind if you have any recommendations for either of us. I did get a recommendation on the Lit-Lib page for something that I think it's called The Wall by somebody.
The John Wall. John Wall. You know that? Nope, you don't.
Nope.
Okay, anyways.
Next
week's
episode
episode
go up will be
Anarchist Cookbook. No. Yes.
yes,
The Dungeons Anarchist Cookbook
by Matt Dinneman. And if you'd like to join our book club for the month, you still have time at the time of posting this.
Reading Buffalo
we
Hunter
are reading by Stephen
Graham.
Jones. There's a middle name. Graham
Stephen
Jones.
Graham Jones.
Okay. I was like, I know there's
I was giving you Graham
like,
to see if you could finish it.
I thought it was just Stephen Graham. I think that's what was getting me. I was like, I thought there was something in the middle, but Graham was the middle.
Yeah. So I guess thanks for listening, and thank you, and good night.